Hello, everybody, and welcome to Healthy Little Pumpkins. I love this presentation because I love Halloween. I love all the traditions of Halloween, the costumes, the decorations, carving pumpkins, visiting neighbors. What happens when you visit your neighbors, though? What do they give you? Um, well, they give you unhealthy Halloween treats. And it so happens that those treats we know cause a lot of problems, diabetes, obesity, cardiovascular disease, certain cancers, tooth decay, behavioral disorders. It's a total bummer, you know, and it kind of causes a little bit of conflict in terms of being a parent and wanting them to have fun and trying to find that balance. And you might be wondering, why is a chiropractor doing a workshop on sugar? Well, it so happens that when we go back to the whole basis of chiropractic and how it all started, it has to do with stress, and chiropractors deal with stress. And typically when we think of a chiropractor, we think of trauma. But a lot of that stress actually comes from three places. It all comes from one of three places. It's thoughts, trauma, and toxins. So typically when you think of stress, if I just say the word stress, I'm going to think of emotional stress, and those are your thoughts, right? And obviously, when you think of a chiropractor, you think of trauma, so that's going to cause stress in the body. And then there's chemical stress that comes from toxins. And this stress is going to manifest itself. It all has to be processed by the same nervous system. So your brain and spinal cord all has to process that stress. So if you look at this little diagram here, you can see the thoughts and the toxins and the trauma. It all goes into that same pool of stress. And then that stress turns into a negative behavior. And then eventually that negative behavior turns into dis-ease. Dis-ease is kind of a chiropractic term. It's not the same as disease. This is kind of before disease. So dis-ease means your body is not functioning properly. So for example, if you have toxins in your body, that might cause stress on the nervous system. And then you're going to have a negative behavior. Let's say you have a carcinogen that goes into your body. That negative behavior might be that your body is going to form a tumor, and that results in dis-ease and eventually disease. If we look at the diagram here on the right, you can see what your spinal cord actually does. When we talk about regulating stress, you can see all the parts of the spinal cord that manage the different organs in your body. So when there's stress in any of those organs, your nervous system, those nerves go back to your nervous system, and then the message goes up to your brain, and your body, your whole nervous system has to process that stress, no matter where that stress comes from. One of the ways we assess that in our office, that stress on your organs and blood vessels and glands and that part of the nervous system, is with the neural therm. So we can see this little, on the bottom left here, there's this diagram. That's a sample of a scan that was done in our office on a 1-year-old. And you can see on this 1-year-old that there is already some stress on her nervous system. So let's talk about something scary because it's Halloween. We're going to talk about sugar. This is scary stuff. The American Heart Association recommends the maximum intake for children is 10 to 16 grams per day. Okay, so that is 2 of these little candies on the bottom and 1 of those on the right, 1 of those little Snickers bars. So that is a little bit scary, isn't it? Especially when you think about all those possible diseases that could result. And I mean, I realize it is just 1 day, right? Maybe you let them binge a little bit, but you still have to understand that is, you can't really save it up. That is how much your body can process in 1 day. So what are some alternatives? There's a bit of a movement right now to provide alternatives to treats. So if you are handing out candy and there are trick-or-treaters coming to your door, you can hand out things like Halloween pencils, plastic spiders, glow sticks, mini pumpkins, Halloween stickers. The stickers are really popular, and tattoos. At our workshop on Thursday, we put together these little Halloween bags. That was a lot of fun. There's some little gold coins there that they just went crazy over. They cost about 1 cent each, maybe even less, like a big bag. And you just put those in there and they go crazy. We have little witch fingers. That looks like a ping pong ball, but it's an eyeball. You can't see the actual eyeball. And there's a plastic, a rubber bat. I mean, you know, they love the rubber bats. Every kid loves a rubber bat. And each of these bags cost us about 50 cents to $1. So, you know, in our house, we have 250 kids coming to our house. This is probably not what we're going to do. I'll be honest with you. I'm not going to spend 250 bucks on Halloween candy. But if you get 20 kids, or maybe just those first few kids, those, you know, the young ones that come around, you know, 7 o'clock, 7:30, you know, those young kids don't eat candy anyway, right? Have something else for them, something that they can play with. You know, a few months ago, I went to the dollar store and kind of scoped out things that I could put in there. But, you know, places like Toy City and the dollar store, even now, they have they have lots of little trinkets and lots of stuff that you can put in there, like the ones I just showed you. There's a little bit of a movement going on now called the Teal Pumpkin Project. And the Teal Pumpkin Project is really cool. What this is they want 100,000 families to pledge that they are going to provide alternative treats that are an alternative to candy. And what you do is you paint one of your pumpkins teal, and that means that you're giving out non-candy treats. Mostly this is for food allergy awareness. You know, I'm not even getting into allergies. I'm not even getting into gluten and other stuff. I mean, that is a whole other thing. I'm just talking about sugar today, but I still think this is a fantastic thing if you're into actually helping the other kids in the neighborhood. Now, this is something you can do with your kids. This is a website called, oh, actually, I don't know the name of it. Oh, here we go. No, anyway, if you Google the Switch Witch, here we go, switchwitches.com. And this is a really neat story. If you've never heard about the Switch Witch comes kind of like the Easter Bunny, or the, not like the Easter Bunny, like the Tooth Fairy. So the Switch Witch comes and takes the candy away and leaves a toy. And if you've ever heard of Elf on the Shelf, like at Christmas time, you can buy these little Switch Witches. Personally, I think it's enough to just tell a story. I like to make the story really scary because it's Halloween. So in the spirit of, you know, Little Red Riding Hood and everything, I say that the Switch Witch, you have to give all of your candy. Otherwise, the Switch Witch will come in the night and eat you. That's me. That's the way I would do it. But you can tailor that however you want. I think my son would get a kick out of that if I tell him that. If you are, you know, you have to kind of decide on your values. Well, am I going to let him have a little bit of candy to last, you know, a few days? Make a little jar. Just set the amount before you go out and say, this is how much you're going to be allowed to keep. And, you know, set that and say, okay, all of this that goes in here, the Switch Witch isn't going to be able to see it. This is a magic jar. But it's all a really cool story. I actually went to the Village Toy Shop and asked them what people usually buy for their kids for the Switch Witch. And they said it's usually something small from the fun wall. And I think that's really great because you're not assigning too much value to the actual candy. You're not making a big deal out of it, even though it is a big deal. You're not assigning too much value, but they did say that some people go for the bigger toys. So if you are going to let your kids binge, you're going to let them eat some candy, make sure you just examine their behavior and observe it. This is my son after the first time he ate chocolate. And this was not normal behavior. I mean, it wasn't horrible. It wasn't like he was sick or, you know, this just was not his normal behavior. And it's a really good idea to just observe your behavior because a lot of the time, I'm just going to turn that off. A lot of the time as parents, you know, we wonder if our parenting's bad, or we wonder if we're doing something wrong. This gives you a chance to just observe. Is it something they're eating? Is it their diet? You know, is it the sugar? Is that why they're behaving badly? But, you know, the next day we asked him, do you want chocolate? And he said no. And we just threw it all away. And that's because we'd established healthy habits to begin with. you know, a lot of the time, I know growing up, we would take out the Halloween candy a month before. We'd buy it early, and then it would be on there, and we'd be eating Halloween candy for a month. And we have to remember Halloween's just one day. All right. You need to establish healthy habits and really just make it one special day if that's what you're going to do. If you're going to let them go nuts for one day, that's fine. You have to establish your own values and do whatever you like. But, you know, it really is about your habits every single day. It's what you do repeatedly that makes you excellent. Excellence isn't an act, it's a habit. So you can't just be good once, you know, you have to be good every day. So other ways, you know, it isn't just food. You want to stay active. And you can stay active, really just get back into it. The day after Halloween, go for a walk or go for a hike in the trees or find out if there's a public skate. Really make a point around Halloween to be active and have a healthy lifestyle. You know? Now, we've been talking about sugar, and it's really funny. I like this slide because, you know, for the past, especially about 10 or 15 years ago, we were really into, you know, categorizing food as carbohydrates, proteins, and fats, as if there are only 3 types of food, you know. And it reminds me of, you know, of the 3 elements of earth, wind, and fire. But we know very well now that there are more than 3 elements. There are probably even more elements than this if we, you know, this looks bigger than when I was in university. So, you know, there are even more than one type of carbohydrate. Sugar is a type of carbohydrate, and there's more than one type of sugar. And we don't just want to look at the type of sugar, we want to look at the sources of it. If your sugar is coming from a fruit, it's a lot different than sugar that's coming from a chocolate bar. You know, I've heard a lot of people saying, you know, I don't want them to have too much sugar. And I get, you know, with fruit juice, yeah, you're going to get a sugar spike because it's a little more concentrated and it doesn't have the fiber. But if you are eating a raw fruit, you know, that is not the same, especially an organic fruit, that is not the same as eating, you know, a processed, refined sugar that has, you know, glucose syrup or something like that in it. You know, you just really want to know what the source of the sugars is. You know, if you're talking about a chocolate, is the chocolate organic? Or is it, are there possibly other chemicals that are accompanying it? So just a little bit of food for thought there. You know, we're not talking about fruits and vegetables here. And when your kids do come home, have some other snacks for them. You don't want them just coming home and, you know, pigging out on all of their candy after you've inspected it. Give them some other alternatives, some roasted pumpkin seeds. That was always big when I was growing up. Homemade granola bars that we had at our workshop, or our nanny made them, and she calls them ghoul-nola bars. I'm not sure if that's going to catch or not, but and dark chocolate, like I said about dark chocolate, if you're having a high quality dark chocolate, and you know, it's not the same thing, like a Whistler organic chocolate or an Alter Eco. It's not the same thing as eating, you know, your run-of-the-mill Halloween chocolate. It's a completely different thing. And it's the sort of thing that you want to teach your kids about food. Let them tell the difference between a higher quality type of food as opposed to a lower quality one. You know, give them that life skill. One of the ways that we as a family really have good habits as far as eating, you know, fresh, organic fruits and vegetables every day, and even organic meats, is by ordering it in every week. And we order our vegetables through spud.ca. What I can do is I can give you a little a coupon code, so you get $25 of vegetables. So hopefully I'll figure out where to put that for you. But you can go, you know, you can go to Thrifty and IGA here in Port Moody, and they usually don't carry the same things. You know, we have to go to Thrifty to get potatoes, but they don't have them at IGA. And we have to go to IGA to get onions, but you can't get them at Thrifty. So it gets a little bit tricky if you are trying to eat organic. And plus, if you order them in from Spud, you don't get that binge shopping. You're not walking out and going, oh, maybe I'll just get a Delicio on the way out. you know, and it's so easy to manage it. You get into that weekly habit, and you know, it is a very easy way to manage your family's health in terms of their diet. And you know, a lot of the families are worried about bears. I can tell you, you know, we live right on the verge of the forest, and we do get bears walking down the street once in a while, but they've never gone into our bins. We've been doing this for 5 or 6 years, and they've never gotten into our bins yet, or never tried anyway. So the first choice would be organic fruits and vegetables that are fresh. The second choice would be processed organic natural foods. And, you know, I'm not going to get too much into food, but I do want to get into the other lifestyle things. So we're talking about diet, and we talked about exercise. And the next thing is actually chiropractic care, because the nervous system is under stress and it needs to be checked. And it should be part of a healthy lifestyle for all kids from birth onward. Okay. It's important to be proactive, not just with their diet, but with the care of their nervous system. And, you know, we always hear things like, oh, she's fine. You know, oh, no, she's fine. You know, I brought my boy in for colic, but, you know, my daughter's fine. The truth is, you just don't know until you have them checked. You just don't know. You know, we'll do anything for our kids when they're sick. Anything. I bet any parent would say that. If they're sick or we're afraid and we're reacting, we'll do anything for them. But most people, unfortunately, lack that vision to be proactive and have their kids checked regularly. And a lot of people are just scared, you know. It's a bit mystifying. Like, what are you going to do? And here's a video of me checking my daughter, and you can see it's just a really gentle. Most of the time, I'm done with the adjustment, with checking them, and you know, they say, when are you going to adjust them? Because they're expecting something a lot more dramatic. But you can see it's really gentle, and you know, kids and babies, they love to be checked. You know, if I had a choice, if it was, you know, I had a choice, I had to choose, and I could get 2 adjustments per year, and I had a choice between adjusting myself or my kids once, I would choose to have my kids checked. I mean, would I send them to any chiropractor? Probably not. I do a little bit of research, but you know, certainly I would definitely choose my kids. So that being said, most people, to be honest with you, they're not coming in to be proactive. They're coming in to treat conditions for their kids. You know, their kids are getting things. The most common conditions would be ADHD, ear infections, colic, bedwetting, allergies, and sports injuries. I think that's one area where I really shine. I mean, I have a postgraduate degree in sports injuries, and I'm currently doing one in family care and pediatrics. So that is one area that I'm really passionate about. I wish I had somebody like me when I was little, because I played a lot of sports, and a lot of kids now are active. I know a lot of kids, most of my patients are active. A lot of them couldn't come to my workshop because they had soccer practice, you know, so we're going to work on the time next time. But here's a scary story. It is Halloween, so we're going to tell you a scary story about Johnny. It's not his real name, but he is a member of my family. This was about 20 years ago when he was born, but he didn't poop in the first month of his life. And, you know, at first the doctor said it was normal, and they ended up taking him to a different doctor, and that doctor referred him to a specialist, and they said, that specialist said, you got to go to the hospital right away. So they did some imaging, and he had a blockage the size of an orange in his colon. And they put him in a colostomy bag to sort of relieve the pressure. And he was diagnosed with a disease called Hirschsprung disease. So what happens with that is the nerve going from the spine to the colon doesn't work properly. And that part of the colon had to be surgically removed. So you talk about doing anything for your kids when they're sick, right? of course you would do this. It's amazing that we could even do this, that the science actually exists, that you could actually resort to this. It's an amazing accomplishment. But, you know, of course you'll do anything. So you're in the hospital, you have to cut them open, take that part of the colon out, put it back together. He's in the hospital for a month or two, and only some of his function returned. He required suppositories, and he couldn't go to the washroom without that type of assistance. A few years later, you know, it was still about the same. There were still a lot of issues. And they were visiting his chiropractor. They were visiting, you know, they brought the kid into their chiropractor, and he said, you know, why don't we check him out? So they checked him, and during the first time that he was checked on the table, he actually pooped on the table. And it was a complete unassisted bowel movement. And after a few years of having his spine checked and adjusted, that full function returned. And all the doctor said at that time was, what if we checked him before the surgery? You know, just think about that for a second. Think about the trajectory of the boy's life. You know, he would have probably, they would have brought him from the hospital. We always say, you know, their first car ride should be the chiropractor. Brought him from the hospital, had him checked. And their friends would say, oh, did you get him, you took your baby to a chiropractor? Yeah, I don't know if it helped. But there would have been no surgery. None of that would have even happened, right? Think about the trajectory, the difference that makes in that child's life for the rest of his life. Let's think about something else. What if a child has a 30% dysfunction? That boy had 100% dysfunction. What if he has a 30% dysfunction? Do you think you would notice? Yeah, he has a bowel movement 2 out of 3 days. That's no big deal. That's normal, right? Would you want them to have 100% function? What if it was another organ that was affected? It could be any organ in the body. What if every child was checked? You know, how much of a difference do you think? What kind of a dent would that make in the universe if just every child got checked as soon as they were born, right after they were born? And what if everybody was checked regularly? You know, we kind of know this. There was a study done in 1992 that said if everybody went to a chiropractor just for their back pain, that the country, Canada, would save $1.5 billion or something like that. And I mean, it's more now with inflation, it's billions of dollars. That's just for back pain. What if everybody got checked regularly? You know, and the point I'm making here is anybody can react, but it takes a really special parent to actually be proactive and make decisions for their child's health beforehand. And that includes the diet. It includes exercise and taking them out and being, you know, healthy and active. And it includes bringing them in to get adjusted, you know. And you don't want to wait until you're afraid. A lot of companies, you know, I won't mention them, but a lot of companies will try to scare you, and you make decisions based on fear, you know, to take a medication because you're afraid. That's not a good time to make any decision. You don't want to make a decision when you're angry. You don't want to make one when you're afraid. You want to make sensible decisions. And that's why wellness care, that's why proactive care is such a good idea. You can choose a healthy lifestyle and decide what your values are. You know, different strokes for different folks. But empower yourself, empower your family, and make those decisions proactively instead of reactively. And the other thing is to establish these habits as a family. Lead by example. You know, do all of these things yourself and treat yourself the way that you want your kids to be. All right, everybody, and that's it. Thanks a lot, and I will see everybody later.